It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means, don't you? It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Yeah, baby. Woo! I am so excited. I've got a dear friend that I've known for longer than either of us would like to admit on the show, Michael Eames. And as I've said in past episodes when he's been on or at the Road Rally or even in private to him, he is literally like the smartest guy I know about so much in the music industry and articulates it so well. Yeah, he's a publisher. He's always on the board. Are you still on the board of like California Copyright or any of that stuff?
I was president of the AIMP, Association of Independent Music Publishers. I'm officially a former past president, but I'm still, I'm actively involved. They're my people.
Yep, they sure are, and they are lucky to know you because most music people creative people in general, don't also have great business heads some of the time, but you have the best of both. So I'm honored to know you and really happy to have you on the show.
Always happy to be here. I love Taxi TV.
Aw, thanks. So we are going to talk about the elephant in the room, which is AI. We've been talking about it more and more lately. There's certainly a lot of noise about it out there, and some people are panicking. Some are pretending nothing's happening, see no evil, hear no evil. Most composers are somewhere in the middle, which means they're confused, as we all are, I think. So I wanted to have a real conversation with somebody who actually has skin in the game, which Michael does as a publisher and just being a really smart guy about all things publishing. So let me start with the big picture, Michael. From where you sit as a publisher, what do you think most composers are getting wrong about their perception of where AI is? Because they hear rumors on the internet. They see people pontificating that probably shouldn't be. What have you heard from them?
You're right. That is the elephant in the room, 30,000-foot question. I mean, I will certainly be honest to say that though I don't have an account, I have followed my AI experience has been checking in on Suno. From probably the first time 2 years ago to different times in between. I will certainly admit that it's really scary how much better it has become in just 2 years. To be honest, it's probably if you maybe ask this question to me on if we did it today and then we do it on a different day, you might get a slightly different answer, but I am going to take faith in ultimately human creativity. That am I nervous about AI? A little bit more about how, as we're going to get into, how it gets tracked, how it gets monetized, how it gets legalized, basically. But it's absolutely here to stay. It's not going away. So I think we all just have to come up with the best way to handle it and how to incorporate it. It's interesting just experientially. So we're closing out 2025. I have had one-on-ones with my staff and talked to the creative team. And what has really been their biggest comment is all the people who are sending them music is that though most of the songwriting is still not being done by AI, the big trend that they're seeing even with experienced producers and songwriters is they're just doing demos and coming up with ways to see how they feel the song is going by getting Suno and similar platforms to record their songs for them or just throw out their demos. And then some of them are, then submitting them to us. That we do tons of film and TV licensing, as you know. And where we have just recently as a company drawn a line in the sand about a month ago is that we will take a Suno or AI. I'm not trying to call out or promote Suno above any other thing. Also, I'll try to only say AI. But we're taking on a case by case basis an AI produced track, but we're drawing the line that any vocal that we would put out there into the film and TV world in particular has to be a human vocal. We won't pitch an AI vocal. And but I don't want to get too far away from your question too. So composers, everybody's using it from what I understand at some level or another, some more extensively than others. Um, you know, I think I'd be a bit more concerned if I were a composer that is focused primarily in the production music space. I think that's more the space that's going to get impacted, already been impacted, though that's not my space, that I think is going to feel it more.
Are you talking about instrumental, the instrumental
Yeah,
side?
sorry,
Okay.
instrumental production music sort of space. But what I think is, and there's been a whole lot of creatives that have come out publicly about taking a stand that we all need to come up with guidelines to responsibly use AI and how it's going to impact the human workforce. But what I think is where I go back and forth on this, especially as it relates to the instrumental production music space, is that technically speaking, anything that is 100% AI produced is not entitled to copyright protection per the U.S. Copyright Office.
Right.
So a film and TV studio is likely not going to use an entirely AI produced theme song, or whether it be instrumental or vocal, because you can get no copyright protection in it. Everyone can rip it off, and who wants to have their audio signature for something that they're going to spend millions of dollars on to be completely copied and used without that they have no recourse against it. But the flip side of that is that the Copyright Office, and even most recently the PROs, have said that they will accept partially partially AI produced or created things are okay.
Right.
And then I just go into the line of, well, humans lie. So how is anyone gonna, who is ever going to admit again that something was 100% produced by AI? Because they're only going to say partial. And until we come up with technology that can track what is AI and what is not, which I'm not knowledgeable enough in that space. Some of it, there are some things out there that I think are that have made inroads into that. But I must admit, I'm not on top of it. It's, as you can tell by my answer, it's a murky space.
Well, we use three different AI detectors here at Taxi, and some of our members are frustrated that virtually all of our listings for film and TV say this company, not meaning Taxi, but the company we're sending the music to, we have been now for a year putting a thing in there that says AI alert, this company cannot accept music that was generated with AI, but you can use AI for plugins and for mastering. So
Okay.
the AI detectors will pick up that use as well. I was having lunch, as you know, a couple days ago. I did a roundtable with I don't know, probably 12 or 15 different music libraries that are our most active clients right now, and we had the same discussion, and they're all as confused as we are, and we all feel.
It's bad.
Sorry, say again. You broke up.
Oh, I don't feel as bad then, that I'm sort of like feeling like I'm providing a murky answer.
Oh, no, not at all. Everybody's feeling murky about this because, it's not only the Wild West, but it's a new frontier and it hasn't been figured out. But you're absolutely right. I mean, just in the last couple of weeks, the PROs and the Copyright Office said, well, partially AI that's partially, or music that's partially created by AI is okay. So is the Copyright Office going to run an AI detector? No. Are the PROs going to run an AI detector? No. Is Warner Brothers going to run an AI detector? Probably not. And you're right. Some people won't be honest about it, and they'll say, "No, it's, mostly me." And my personal feeling is now that the majors are in the process of cutting these deals, and the settlements have been reached, and that the Copyright Office is okay with partial, and the PROs are okay with partial. A lot of libraries would benefit by, and the members, taxi members, and composers and musicians in general would benefit by the fact that they may have a catalog of stuff that they might want to do foreign language vocals on. You could certainly use AI to translate it. That would be kosher. But
Right.
now you take an English vocal and click something that says, give it to me in Mandarin, or give it to me in French or Italian or whatever. I'm kind of okay with that because now the license has been granted in terms of these settlements. And it doesn't get into publishing because it's just a performance, which the record companies have signed off on. Publishers, to
Right.
the best of my knowledge, have not. So why do you think the libraries were all hesitant? Nope, nope. Yeah, we get what you're saying, Michael, but we're not ready to go there yet. Why do you think they're still hesitant?
Well, I think what I've talked to, qualifying that, I'm not day to day in the production music space, but, and this goes, I think, have addressed this in other taxi TVs, and it certainly gets talked about at the Road Rally, that I think I want to make a distinction, since we're talking about these different companies, that there are non-exclusive, sort of libraries and companies, and then others that are exclusive. And I think the ones that are exclusive, that have done this where they're bringing in, the works that they're essentially buying, as part of their deal, as long as they have vetted it and their paperwork is such that they become the 100% owner of everything, like a typical work for hire agreement. I think what I know music libraries are looking into, and you may know more than myself in this area, where someone that owns everything exclusively as work for hires for themselves, they can use their own material to train generative AI, because they're training it on material that they own.
Right.
And that's been the biggest area that I think all of these deals that we're hearing about, the deals are really dealing with both, input and output, because we all, as publishers or rights holders, feel that we need to license the input when our works are being used to train AI. But then, to the extent that the AI is able to track what elements it's pulled in from what they used as input gets used in the output, we feel that we should get royalties and participate in the output. So we need payment on both the front end, as it were, the input, and payment on the back end. And that's what a lot of these deals that we're starting to see are setting in place. But more deals are going to come for sure. We still have a couple of the legal cases that are still playing out in court. I think Anthropic is probably the one that's been around the most, that a bunch of publishers have sued. And there's just, the problem with our legal system is that it can't keep up with how quickly the technology is improving. Because the last time I heard anything, out of a number of these AI platforms, it's crazy how much it's improved. But where I still feel they need to improve more is those composers and songwriters who are using AI to produce their entire recording, including the vocal. The two women that lead my sync team are both singers, and they have, in the last 6 months, done a number of listening things. And because they're both singers, they can tell an AI vocal, because AI really has yet to effectively incorporate how a human being breathes and sings at the same time, because the AI isn't taking a breath. It doesn't need to. So it's when AI gets that under control and handles it very well, it's going to get a little harder to tell. What I'm fascinated by, and I know I could go off on a bunch of different tangents, but there was a lot of attention in the press about 6 weeks ago about I think it's a country act named Breaking Rust, that the press, first of all, completely mischaracterized it, saying that this AI generated thing went to #1 on the country charts, and it didn't go on #1 on the main country chart. It only went on the digital country chart only. But now that song is being sued by two other songwriters and publishers who feel that AI song by Breaking Rust infringes their song. So it's been fascinating to me just how the public reacts to things. Like, I may be going off on too much of a tangent, but
That's okay. We've got plenty of time, and I love hearing your perspective. Right. So tangent away.
Okay, well, I'm reminded a year ago that Coke put out a Christmas ad that is all AI generated. And if we all Googled this about, so late 2024, Coke had a huge backlash against them, that everyone was so upset that they took an ad that was, I think, don't quote me, but say 30 something years old, and they completely recreated this classic Coke ad using AI, and everything in the ad is AI generated, I believe, including the music, and the public backlashed against it, and it got a whole lot of negative coverage. But I just started seeing the ad again, so I would hope that someone out there in the press is kind of taking the public's temperature of, here we are a year later and Coke is running the same ad that they ran before. Is it getting just as much negative reception as it did the first time? Or is Coke banking on that over time we're all going to become normalized to what AI is, and will we get desensitized to it morally or otherwise, where it becomes more commonplace? And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Anyone who's creative is going to tell you that's a bad thing, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But yet, creative people who are against AI will quietly and privately admit to me that they're using AI in different capacities to make their own music, whether it is a foreign language vocal or a harmony stack, because they can't sing that high and they need that in the harmony.
Right.
And certainly I think everybody's comfortable with anything that is like a plug-in, like a denoise plug-in that takes out clicks, yep, pops, and hiss. Spectral EQ analysis that can take a mix that you do and you want it to sound more like Foo Fighters record, and so you take their song that's kind of in the same ballpark as yours, and AI does an analysis of the dynamic EQ curve and then applies that same dynamic EQ curve to yours. It's analyzing that data, but it's not actually, the vocal wasn't done by it. It's a mechanical or technical. Right.
Yeah, it's not necessarily creating anything new. It's speeding up a process that you would otherwise maybe take a lot more time personally, and it can replicate it quicker. I mean, look, I'll be honest too. Even though our office as an independent publisher, we're not obviously doing the music creation ourselves, but I'm certainly using AI now that, when, for example, we represent the Johnny Mercer Foundation and the rights that foundation has acquired over the years via termination for Johnny Mercer, who died in 1976. We also represent two of the three heirs of Harry Warren, who was also a contemporary of Johnny Mercer's. But both of them, who wrote together for like a 10-year period of time, they both have over 1,000, released songs that are registered at ASCAP. And where we're starting to use Chat GPT in particular, though any of the AI platforms, Claude, et cetera, Gemini, can all perform the same function. But where we as publishers are starting to embrace it, and it's helpful, is I could take both Excel outputs of the Johnny Mercer catalog of, say, 1,300 songs and the Harry Warren output of 1,100 songs, load them into ChatGPT, ask ChatGPT to ask me which songs don't add up to 100%, and or the songs that they wrote together, analyze the 1,000+ songs and confirm for me that the songs that they co-wrote together are not registered more than once, and they share the same song code, so that I know there's only one registration for the works that were co-written. And it gives me the results in 15 seconds.
Right.
I mean, those kinds of things for anyone in analyzing data, that's a fantastic use of AI. That's not, that's where we're using it as a tool, and musicians are using AI as a tool. But I think what is going to be fascinating for me, for anyone who gets into music, everyone got into music because they love creating. But, if you start to use AI for everything that you do in the creative process, aren't you going to kind of become bored? That's not why you went into music in the first place. So I guess I have to trust that at some level, the humans who love to create are just going to consider AI as another tool in the toolbox, but it won't replace why they got into this field in the first place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. But the definition of the word tool is the wishy-washy part of that, because you could make the argument, I've got to turn this in tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and I need background vocals, and I just got a call from my singer that she's got COVID, can't come over tonight. Right. So I use AI to create that vocal stack. It's a tool, but it's also replacing a function of what a human being could do and get paid for. And up until the majors cut their settlement with Suno and Udio, whoever, you could make the argument you don't have license to use that vocal performance. You're not sampling it. You're not, copying it. You're using data from it. This kind of inflection, this kind of tonality, all that stuff. So it's a slippery slope. The definitions are definitely, I don't know if fungible is the right word. It's not. But yeah, the lines aren't clearly drawn.
Yeah, I mean, and legally speaking, all these platforms, you just mentioned Suno and Udio, like, come on, they've totally been using all of our copyrighted material to train their AI. There's no question. I don't think anyone can deny it. They're cutting all these deals that is giving them the legal permission to do it. But I mean, have they really kept track of everything that they fed into the AI to train it? And is someone actually saying, oh, we just did a settlement with Warner, so these, pick a number, these 30,000 recordings that we've just now gotten approved, is someone actually going through to say, okay, here are all the recordings that we've fed into this that we haven't gotten approved yet? Like, I just don't think any of that care has gone into it. I think it scrapes the internet. It teaches itself on everything it encounters. So even if all these deals legalize ultimately the majority of the copyrighted content that's out there, who's to say that it's all inclusive and it's covered everything that it should cover? I'm sure there's something that will fall through the cracks. And how does anybody deal with that?
Let's talk about watermarking or some sort of technological thing like that makes it easier to track. I mean, certainly the compute speed of AI, that if there were something like a watermark, that's almost like Excel work. It would really speed up the process of tracking this stuff. And I'm a little surprised that the Copyright Office and the PROs haven't proffered any ideas or even voiced an opinion on something like a watermark. It's going to be very hard to say this is 83% AI if you used a bunch of AI plugins and AI mastering. But maybe it wasn't, the lyric wasn't written with AI, the vocal wasn't done with AI, the track wasn't produced with AI, but nonetheless, there's some AI cooties inside of that code or in those
Yeah.
digits that are going to get detected. So is your thing going to become invalidated by the PROs or the Copyright Office or a network?
I mean, the other part of this, I completely agree with you, and I admittedly have not yet had any conversations with anyone at the PROs as to why they felt they had to sort of come out. I think it was ASCAP, BMI, and SOCAN, I
Mm-hmm.
think, were the three that sort of did it as the headline of that they're now accepting this. So I haven't talked to anybody, but yeah, you would think watermarking or some element of this had to be part of that. Why did they feel the pressure to do that now? Maybe because they know that, as you're indicating with the composers that you talk to, maybe AI has infiltrated, for lack of a better word, into the creative process more than any of us even realized. So they felt it was a proactive thing that they wanted to put out there, that they're willing to accept this now. But the practical thing that concerns me is, let's even say, so let's say there is a watermark that comes in. Every recording, it ends up being watermarked, and everything gets fed into AI. And let's say, I'm just pulling numbers, of course, out of my head, but 50 individual musical compositions that were previously licensed and approved to be allowed to train the AI, and you're able to track that. How, like, you then have to share revenue amongst 50
Right.
individual compositions,
And to what
and how do
degree or
you
percentage?
to what degree, and then how do you allocate that? And then I've heard some talk about and read about that, and again, this particular number I'm pulling out of my head, but whatever the top 20 musical compositions that comprised a particular AI work, there's going to be a cutoff where only the top 20 are going to get included in writers and publishers share, and anything below the top 20 is going to be disregarded, because then at that point it just becomes too
Minute.
unmanageable for
Yeah.
databases around the world. Like, it's just, there's so many rabbit holes that one goes down, that then I just sit back to be like, well, why are we even going down this hole? Like, why can't we all just stick to being humans and create music the way we know we do it better anyway?
I think
Like,
that
why involve the guy in the process, I guess.
because there are a lot of people with a song in their head or a song in their heart. I first heard about Suno about 3 years ago. It was with my daughter's in-laws. We all went out for dinner. And they said, oh, check this out. We wrote a song for our daughter who turns 12 today. And they played the song on their phone at the dinner table in this Italian restaurant. And I went, wow, I didn't know you guys were musical. And they said, we're not. We used a program to do it. We just fed in a thing called a prompt and basically said, our daughter Naomi, and she likes to ride horses and she's into ballet, and her best friend is Susie. And they just put all those facts in there. And this thing spit out a cute little pop song that a 13-year-old, kind of a tweeny pop song that a young lady of her age
Sure.
would listen to. And it was really impressive. Now, was it impressive, as a modern pop record that you would hear on the radio or, on a playlist somewhere? No. But compared to what they could do on their own, it was really impressive because they couldn't do jack on their own. So for recreational users, as using it as kind of a toy or a novelty, I'm fine with that. Nobody's going to
Sure.
make any money from it. But I also make the comparison that if I sat down and instructed, which that's what it is, it's an instruction. If I gave a prompt to Suno or Udio, wherever, on how to make a 90-second dramedy cue, I could tell it, make the first, come in with a drum fill, go right into the first two bars, which are pretty sparse but hint at the melody. 2 bars later, add a second instrument. 2 bars later, add a third instrument. When you're 16 bars in, flip it and make that sort of a bridge, a B section for the cue, then go back to the A section, add another instrument, another instrument, another instrument, and a buttoned ending. And what I would get as a result would be a pretty professional sounding cue. If my wife did the same thing, because she's not musical, God bless her, if my wife did the same thing, it would come out sounding a little bit like a dramedy cue, but not one that a library would want to sign or a TV show would want to use. So you could make a strong case that in the hands of somebody who is a true musician, producer, arranger, that it can be used as a great tool to make them, rather than doing 1 or 2 cues a day, they could do 10 cues a day.
Sure.
And we're getting a lot of members. We're having to call members every day now, or email them, say, we think that's an AI vocal, even though the listing said no AI. So we're doing our best to protect the libraries, even though we're not under any obligation, but we don't want to burn any relationships with them by having them go, dear God, 80% of what I got from Taxi has AI vocals in it. What about somebody who's got a lyric that's about 60% done and writer's block sets in? They're going to go to AI and they are going to find, oh, that's a great idea. They may tweak it a little bit and revise it. So they could make the argument that what I've got here was substantially created by a human, but AI gave an assist. So, yeah, it's murky.
And one could argue that that's not entirely dissimilar to when someone has writer's block. In the days before we were digital, there was a rhyming dictionary or a thesaurus that when someone sort of fell the block, you picked it up and then you looked up your thing, and that then would trigger, oh, I could do this. And so an AI proponent will argue, how is using AI any different than using the thesaurus or the rhyming dictionary back in the day? I mean, to me, it's not entirely the same thing, especially depending on the prompt. As you said, it all comes down to the prompt. What I think is I'm going to frame this as a hope, is what was very fascinating. And if you haven't already seen it, or anyone that's listening hasn't already seen it, go to YouTube and Google like CBS Sunday Morning, or go to YouTube and just search on CBS Sunday Morning AI music. I want to say it was about 2 months ago, where it was a piece that they did that involved an interview with Rick Beato, who is a strong YouTuber, right, in the music space. And it was fascinating that they, as part of the piece, I don't remember the artist's name and it doesn't matter, but they AI created an image, a name, artwork. They created a song, and then they started playing it for people on the street to see what they thought, and then filmed their reactions once they told them that it was entirely AI. And the response was varied. Some were very turned off. Some were like, what, that's actually pretty good. And, if I would want to hear more by that artist. But, what I'm hoping that this AI boom, because we're in a boom, like it's the new thing that everyone's talking about and they're embracing. We're still coming out of, though thankfully largely having come out of COVID, when live music, was dead basically for a couple of years. And I have to hope that, AI generated music. First of all, I've never heard anything AI generated that moved me emotionally. And that's where I kind of feel humans have the edge. And let's say, you talked about your tweeny, fun poppy song. I can totally see that and get that with AI, but I really want to be challenged to find an AI song that moves someone emotionally. And then anyone who gets a fan and starts to follow an artist, well, you can't go out to see a live concert with an AI artist. So is it possible that this whole AI process we're going through will end up developing an appreciation for the actual live human artist that you can go out to hear in a show? And might that ultimately improve the live music business because someone will actually crave wanting to actually see the artist that they follow, that they admire, that they adore, whatever term, will that somehow help that aspect of the business? I don't know the answer, but I
Right.
kind of have to hope that, you know, it's the human condition and how humans are the best ones to capture the human condition in song, that I gotta hope that in the end we're gonna beat out a machine. But if AI can start spouting out songs that make us all cry, then we might be in a little more trouble.
And a
But I'm gonna
robotic artist, that would be interesting. I mean, people have already done some tours that didn't do really well with holographic artists, but I've seen a lot of
exactly.
very convincing robots out there. My wife forbids me to look at female AI robots online. I'm kidding, of course, but I mean, they're getting scary good. Do you know that Elon Musk, he can almost go by just one name, we all know who he is, that his plan, SpaceX is not hiding the fact that they're going to do an IPO in 2026. And the reason they're doing this big raise is they're going to put server farms, AI server farms in space, because that solves two problems. Number one, keeping them cool. And number two, having the power. I think I could be misquoting this, but I think China it built 150 power plants, whether they're coal, nuclear, gas, whatever, over the previous year, and America built
Right.
three or something really nominal. And nobody is questioning the fact that you need massive amounts of power to run these things, massive amount of land to put the real estate on, the buildings that house all these. Musk is planning to put things like the space station in space, where you've got an endless supply of free energy, the sun, never a cloudy or rainy day up there, and it's always cold as
Right.
hell. So the only problem he's got now is the bandwidth of getting, all those digits up and down as quickly as he could if they were on the ground.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
and to be honest, I hadn't actually known that that would be part of the plan of putting server farms up there, but it makes perfect sense because we have enough issues with climate change on our planet, and we know that AI and all these server farms are taking so much energy and water and all these sorts of things, where it honestly makes perfect sense that that would be explored. um, that's going to raise a whole other raft of, God forbid you start to put them on the moon or whatever. Like, there's going to be outcry of that, of we're just destroying planet after planet, with all this stuff. um, oh God,
We'll be dead
these
by
are the
then.
these are the things. Yeah, well, that's exactly where I was going with it.
Screw
I
the
was like,
kids.
this is where I'm 58, and maybe when this all becomes really bad, I won't have to worry about it anymore. But my 23-year-old son gets to, deal with this later. It does make you wonder, like, what is going to happen with all the future generations, musically or otherwise, as all of this technology, kind of takes over.
Well, let's go back to people not knowing that they were listening to AI and their various reactions. My youngest daughter is 25, and for the past many years, watching her and her friends listen to music, they listen to music like I'm listening to you right now, usually with one earbud in. So they have their phone in one
Right.
hand, their iPad on their leg, and the TV going, with a show they're streaming on TV, a live chat with their friends on the iPad, and simultaneously listening to Ariana Grande with one ear, hearing half of stereo. And I would contend that that demographic, that the like 13 to 30 maybe demographic, is going to be a much easier. They're going to adopt AI music much faster than those of us who are looking for, a Cat Stevens song that chokes you up because it reminds you of your dad or whatever.
It's interesting you say that, because I recently, when I was last in Nashville, I had dinner with an A&R guy that I know, A&R in the publishing world, and I think he's late 20s, maybe 30. And his feeling was that this generation that has grown up exactly the way that you just described, right? Especially everything on social media, is that this younger generation is has become so adept at feeling what is genuine and organic. And his theory is that the younger folks actually will reject AI music
Wow.
because they feel that they have been trained way more than you and I have, because we weren't raised on social media, that they are way more attuned to this feels original, this feels honest, this feels, authentic, and anything that doesn't fall into that, they're very quick to judge, and they'll just ignore it or discount it. And I see arguments on both sides, and I'm going to be very fascinated in, say, 5 years, where were we at? And I almost like a study, I think, needs to happen with people in that age range, and sort of take their opinions, what are they listening to, and then let's do one of those studies where they're following up every year and kind of getting asked the same questions and see how things develop. I think could be sort of a fascinating subject for someone in a university study that I have no time to sort of get to. But I'm fascinated by it, because in the end, we're all humans. How are we adapting to all the technology around us, and how is it impacting us? I would argue that we're being impacted negatively by it all, ultimately, at least compared to, you and I wouldn't be doing 3 things at once. I am now, but, back when I was a kid, it was kind of like, it was nice to just be in the moment doing the one thing that, you were out playing. There's some genuine joy to that, instead of doing 3 things at once.
I wish I could focus on any one of the 3, but I thought after this year's road rally I would get a little window of calm. I still haven't finished sending out thank you notes to my panelists. It took me probably 6 to 8 hours to go through all the photographs to pick out the 37 that are going in the newsletter, which I'm late delivering to the guy who puts it together. This week alone, today is Friday, I worked 8 hours on Sunday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, my work day was from 7:30 in the morning, for real, until 11:30 at night. And I still had a hard time falling asleep because I remembered all the stuff I have to do. And that's a function of email. Because you would think, I was thinking back, my dad's been gone now 3 years. He lived till he was 97, 98 years old. Back in his day, I would watch him work. He would sit there for an hour crafting a letter to somebody and then hand it to his secretary, who would type it up for him. He would look at it, blah, blah, blah. Now, he had a computer and he was capable of picking stocks on it, but he could never wrap his head around the fact that I could have a conversation going with you and text on my phone while I'm simultaneously answering Bobby Borg's email, and I'm simultaneously closing a window because it's going to create a feedback loop when I do a taxi TV. It's just, there's more capability because of tech, but more crap flying at us like a fire hose because of tech. So I don't think the net effect is that we're getting more work done, frankly. We're just doing it in little pieces, like packets.
I'm totally with you, because my unfortunate pattern that I've been in of late, and yes, as we close out 2025, there's been a huge list of to-dos, but I'll crash, say, around 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then if I wake up at 3 o'clock, I kind of have to put my phone away and have it not be within reach, because sometimes, especially if I'm waiting on something that's happening overseas, and I'm curious about it, and I've woken up and I can't really immediately go back to sleep, I'm going to pick up the phone and check it out, and then I'm screwed. There's no way I'm going back to sleep, because the brain now just gets activated, and I can't, then I'm stuck, and I can't get back to sleep. I'm going to keep working.
When that happens, tell your lovely wife that you're going to Laskow's house. Here's why. I've got three owls. I've got three owls that have decided to make residence in our backyard or our neighbors' backyards right next to me. And owls will stay in the same neighborhood virtually their entire lives. So now for 3 years, I've had three owls. And I believe it's a mom, a dad, and their baby, because for the first year, one of the three would go, instead of hoo, 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 he'd go, ah. And I've come to learn that baby owls make like a little owl throwing up sound instead of a hoo, hoo, hoo. So when Deb and I bought the house and we renovated it, the master bedroom had a fireplace that really kind of broke up the room in a weird way. So we took the fireplace out, opened up the room, but we left the chimney up there. So, and then we put in extra 2x4s to give it support in case there was an earthquake. Well, the flue, the metal pipe that the flame and the heat and smoke used to go up, is still there. One of the owls loves nothing more than sitting on top of that chimney and hooing at 3 o'clock in the morning, to the point where it wakes me up and I can't go back to sleep. And it's freaking loud because it's like almost on top of our bed, that the sound comes down through that 8-inch flue, then goes into the attic and hits the sheetrock right above our bed. So it's like I'm sleeping with an owl. It's a real pain in the ass.
Right.
Anyway, I digress. So yeah, you can wake me up. I'm probably already up thanks to Mr. Owl. I actually bought a super high intensity flashlight with a strobe function to scare it away, and it just looks at me like, ain't moving.
Well, I have a couple fellow industry friends that we know were subject to the same patterns. So we end up emailing each other at like 4:35 in the morning because we know the other is up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I won't mention the library owner's name, but I used to laugh. It is. It really is. There's a library owner, and he's 3 hours ahead of us time-wise, and I would text him like at 10:30 LA time and get an answer from him. It's 1:30 in the morning. So I'm sitting here doing metadata. Well, there's a good case for AI, because AI can handle metadata really well. Although I would say double and triple check it, because AI does love to make mistakes, and it will lie to you, and it's very complimentary. Oh, Michael, that's the best idea for a business I've ever heard. Would you like me to do this?
I know my fun lately has been pointing out to ChatGPT that it did something wrong.
Yeah.
And then it's like, yes, Michael, you're so right to call me out on that. My bad. Let me redo it for you now.
Absolutely.
Like, just do it right the first time.
Yep. And by the way, I think going back to Elon for a minute, rather than putting server farms on the surface of the moon, which is dark half the time, he's going to put them in floating space stations so they never lose light. But, I can see the launches from Vandenberg from my backyard, and they're now happening once or twice a week. And so I started snooping around. He's putting 50 satellites per launch into space. And by the way, Taxi member invented microsatellites. He worked at NASA, a Taxi member who had a PhD in space science or something, worked at NASA and got fired because he walked into a meeting. So why are we spending, $900 million to build this satellite? He literally took something the size of a bread box, put a phone inside of it, talked NASA into letting him stick it and launch it into space, and they did. And he said, look, I just sent something up there. It cost $1,000, and it's sending back pictures of the Earth. And he got fired from there, started a company like space.com or something. And now that's, a company that grosses hundreds of millions of dollars a year selling digital images to nation states and whoever wants to buy them. But the point being that Elon is putting microsatellites 50 at a time up there, and I'm sure he's doing it to build the network out so that he's got the bandwidth to get all those digits up and down, because that was the last problem, last piece of the puzzle that needed to be solved. So if there's anybody who could figure it out, he's the guy.
I know. I was like, I don't want to make it seem like I am a proponent of Elon. He's a polarizing figure, and we're not going to get into politics. However, what I will say is that I was on a Hawaiian Airlines flight earlier this year, and they just started using Starlink in the airplane. and it was the absolute best internet experience I have ever had on a plane.
There you go.
So I'm a big, so if I ever decided that I was going to sort of like travel the world for a year, like I would sign up for Starlink and I'd bring a satellite with me because I had the most amazing productive time on that 5 hour flight to Hawaii than I've ever had. So I almost only want to go on planes now that have Starlink.
You know, I didn't even check that out, but I'm taking a 14 and a half hour flight on Christmas Eve to the other side of the planet. And I hope it's got Starlink because every time I go up there and take a long flight like that, I'd say, you know what? I'm going to take advantage and I am going to work for 7 or 8 of those hours and do all the stuff that I
Yep.
never get to during the day because I've got inbound emails and text messages and staff members, blah, blah, blah. And then I get up there and start watching Friends reruns that I've seen 3 times for 8 hours. But the quality of the video sucks. Let's go back to something you talked about very early in this conversation, which is if you were a production music library composer, a production music library, and the instrumental side. Now, production music library or music library term can mean anything from instrumental to vocals, but stick with the instrumentals. Why do you feel that that is more threatened than the vocal side?
Well, because, and again, I'm speaking in generalities, so I will qualify with that. But, a lot of the production music outlets that is, say, a lot of the reality TV shows that, frankly, let's face it, all the reality TV shows are reality TV shows because they're less expensive to produce, but they need music. So a lot of those reality TV shows have blanket, libraries or blanket licenses rather, with a number of production music libraries. But I can totally see, a reality television show that doesn't have a big music budget, just feeling like as long as it's not our theme and it's just background music serving a dramatic sort of call it sonic wallpaper purpose, I don't necessarily feel that it is as important of a musical contribution as background use in a scene as opposed to the theme. So why don't I just use AI music that I can get out of a box that it's cheaper and I can even drop my blanket licenses that I already pay for, just use AI music and only worry about my theme or, anything that you'd be used in a promo. And I feel like that is, even though again it's not my space, it's for reasons like that I fear the production music space is going to get impacted before anyone else.
You're right. The 85 to 100 cues get used in the average reality show in an hour. Certainly a lot of use, whereas a 60-minute drama might have 4 pieces of music, which will most likely have vocals in them. Although they could be, a vocal song that's used as background source in a bar. Somebody's having a conversation in a bar, and there's a jukebox ostensibly 50 feet away with something so low in the mix you can't hear it. So let me play devil's advocate. See if I can frame this the right way. Okay, let's go with your assumption that they go, you know what, we're paying 10 grand a season to these 2 libraries for a blanket license all you can eat. So they're going to try and save 20 grand on their production, and they're going to bring in AI music. Where's that music going to come from? I mean, physically.
No, I mean, yeah. I mean, this is where it gets very, very interesting to me about how that business problem gets solved. Because, again, if we assume for the moment that this is produced by, a studio that, frankly, is at least large enough to have a legal staff, the legal staff is going to probably want to make sure that whatever AI music sources they use are ones that, haven't been trained on copyrighted material because they don't want to risk the production getting sued if a piece of music gets used that sounds too familiar that something else that there wasn't a license for to use. I can see a lawyer being very concerned about the source. but then again, I'm postulating, but what is common these days in the production music space, or maybe I shouldn't say common, but it is a increasingly common practice, is that a production music library will take their library, approach a production, and tell them, hey, we will retitle all of our music. We'll give you half of the publishing on these retitled works, so that you can benefit from the production, the blanket license that we're going to give you, and you'll get a taste of the back end. I can kind of see, potentially, those libraries that are exclusive, that have done things that work for hire, that could then offer their own AI music service to a production to say, you don't have to worry about these legalities that your lawyer will be concerned about, because we've trained our own AI on the music that we own, and you can go ahead and create with our AI engine. We'll give you your own custom score that even is just based on the pieces that we own. And then sure, that opens up a whole other can of worms where the library has to figure out a way, like we talked about earlier with the top 20 contributing compositions to something, like they have to track within their own material how they're going to compensate what gets used. But I could see that as being a potential opportunity for those exclusive libraries that could then develop their own AI and offer it to these productions, possibly.
And I love talking to you. It's really, I feel so privileged to count you among my friends and have these discussions, because I always learn a lot. So I would make a counter argument to say, all right, the average library, leaving out the APMs of the world, the other behemoths, and there are a few, but many, many, many libraries now are a 1 or 2 person operation. They've probably picked up the phone or sent emails to 100 different libraries in foreign countries all over the world, cut sub-pub deals with a couple dozen of them. So there's that. Yep. Also, what if that person who's got the sub-pub deal in Italy decides to let some AI train on their catalog, which is 20% belongs to the Michael Penn production music library? There's that problem. And the legalities in Italy may be different than the U.S. But so most libraries are 5 to 20,000 tracks. I would say 10,000 is probably the average for a library that's been around for 10 years or more. They're pretty small catalogs compared to the behemoths. So for them to train on their own stuff, it's going to be inbreeding pretty quickly, because pretty soon the AI tracks will be in their catalog, and AI will be training on stuff that was generated using AI. Before you know it, you're 3, 4, 5 generations down, and you've got a piece of music that has some physical and mental deformities as a result of inbreeding. I don't know how it will manifest, but it ain't going to be pretty. So there's that. But
yeah, I mean, look. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, the butt is leading to a question.
I see a kind of potentially rosy future for Taxi, in that we are the entity that is the brand name. We are the Apple, if you will, if I can be so conceited about that, of curation. Nobody has been doing it for over 30 years. Nobody does the numbers that we do, and does it always high quality, very ethically. So I would contend that this could be another outcome of AI, that somebody who is a talented, creative person that is already doing 2 cues a day, 5 days a week, 10 cues a week, 500 cues a year. They've got 1,500 of them out in the wild. And now they, for whatever legal things happen that give them license to start using AI to a greater degree in their productions, they will be able to have a much higher output. But just because AI did it doesn't mean that it's going to be great every time. It still needs to be curated. It's just another methodology for creation. So I have a feeling that Taxi is going to become more valuable to the world of production music than it already. I mean, many of the libraries are 50 to 80%. Their catalogs are 50 to 80% given to them by Taxi or found for them by Taxi because we've been working
Oh,
with them for.
wow.
Yeah, it's not like a couple hundred here, a couple hundred there, but I've had many library owners over the years privately say to me, dude, without Taxi, I'd have 1,200 things in my catalog. Really? How many do you have now? 10,000. I had
Wow.
one library owner walk me into his condo one day, really nice, beautiful condo, and he said, "You paid for this." And I said, "No, I don't think so. I would have remembered writing the check for this place." And he goes, "No." He said, "Without you and your company and what you've done for my entire career, you literally helped me earn the money that paid for this." So again, maybe it's a little egotistical on my part, but we have the relationships with the composers, we have the relationships with the libraries. If the composers have a more productive way to make more music, that's great. There's going to be a lot more fresh music out there than stuff that's inbred by repeatedly and generationally scraping data from what their catalog is as it sits now. So I'm hoping that I'm not wrong about that, that there's great value in curation, whether it's a human or a robot that created it. So anyway.
Well, I completely agree with you that there's value in creation for sure. Now, even taking what you were sort of posing there, what I could also potentially see is like, let's say our supposition that AI will start to impact the production music space. Well, then what I could also see happening is that some of those smaller libraries, even like you said, 10,000, is say small, certainly as compared to an APM, that, if they start to see a decline in business as a result of AI, well, then someone that has money behind them is going to probably see value, especially if it's a library that is exclusive or at least has work for hire, that it's not the works aren't showing up in multiple non-exclusive libraries. There may be a consolidation opportunity for businesses that are losing business to AI, but then there's an opportunity for someone with money to go in and aggregate all of those individual exclusive libraries, put them under one roof because they can buy them, maybe even presumably at a bit of a discount because the business is going down. But then they have 10 libraries that had 10,000 tracks each. They now own 100,000 tracks, and then they can create AI off of 100,000 tracks, and maybe they're battling, or they're going against sort of what you said in that they have a breadth of offerings, and then their AI, even though it's copying itself over a wider number of tracks, so that it's going to be a longer period of time before the deformities start to show.
Oh, I feel a script coming on. That'd be a great movie about AI creating generational inbreeding that causes technical deformities, not physical ones or mental ones. Let's go back to something you just referred to here that you also spoke about earlier in the show, which is exclusive versus non. Lay it out for people who are newer to the industry, and maybe start with the basic definition of what is exclusive, what is non-exclusive, and then talk about how the non-exclusive people are going to get bitten on the butt by this future with AI.
Yeah, sure. The easier definition is exclusive first, and that would be, when someone enters into an agreement that's exclusive, the company that you're giving the exclusive rights to, they're the only ones that can pitch and license it. You're transferring over, certainly, and maybe I guess we should qualify this since you're asking the question as it relates to people who are new to this, is that there's exclusive control and then there's exclusive ownership. So there are some production music libraries where you may enter into an exclusive agreement where you haven't transferred the ownership, but they're going to control those titles exclusively for a period of time, but it's a limited term and you'll get it back after a period of time. So no one else can license it for whatever limited period of time you agree to, but you'll get it back after a certain period of time.
And meaning that you don't have it in perpetuity, which is a dirty word for a lot of creatives.
Correct. But then that now we move to the dirty word, which is that, there are some production music libraries that I've referred to earlier that say we'll do things as a work for hire, where you're transferring exclusive ownership over to that company, where that means they are getting it in perpetuity. But a lot of the companies that do that, not everyone does it this way, but the ones that I feel the community of all the composers that you deal with look at them in a positive light, because they're being hired, they're getting paid. Deliver me an album of 10 or 15 songs, I'll pay you $1,000 a song. Give me the vocal versions, the instrumental versions, all the following cut downs, and I need stems. And it's become an income source for them. With it, they've made 10 or 15 grand off of getting this project. Yes, they're giving away ownership, but they got money up front. It's kind of a nice symbiotic relationship. But those companies then that acquire those exclusive ownership rights, they own it. They can do whatever they want with it. And then they're in a better position to train AI internally for themselves because they own it. Where it gets really tricky is there's lots of companies that do non-exclusive deals, where non-exclusive, of course, means that you can give it to more than one place. So the same, and I'll just pick three, the mystical number 3, just for the sake of a number, of if 3 non-exclusive companies all could accept your song and they're all pitching it, what becomes then the question of how their deals are done is, are they retitling it? Because some non-exclusive libraries will take it, but then they'll give it a new title, put themselves on it either as the only publisher or a co-publisher, or maybe even put the owner of the company on it as a co-writer. Like, it depends on what their deal is and what you're agreeing to allow them to do. And then they pitch it under one title. But like when you were talking about watermarking earlier, that means that in my example of 3 non-exclusive companies, the waveform of all 3 titles that now, let's say all 3 of them have been retitled, registered at the PRO then has a technological problem, because if they're tracking the waveform, all 3 waveforms are identical because it's the same work. And the PROs, if they get to the point where they're relying on technology to identify and match things, they don't know who to match it to, because there's 3 works that all have the same waveform. Then there are 3 different registrations. What's going to happen? It's a mess. Already it's a mess. But then what has happened, it's certainly in my world, and I am a non-production music world on a daily basis, is that, but yet we sync rep things for people. We deal with the supervisors all the time, and a majority of the supervisors, or I should say a growing majority, don't like to deal with companies that represent music non-exclusively, because they're, in my experience, I experienced this about 10 years ago, where it was at Disney, where a woman who was doing all the licensing happened to sort of look at paperwork, noticed that a couple of titles were very similar, and they had the same writers but different publishers because they were retitled. And so she kind of had this hunch where she thought she'd go back and find the paperwork for the other things that she was familiar with, because she handled it all. And sure enough, she tracked down a piece of music that at least had been licensed by 2 separate non-exclusive companies that had retitled it. She did confirm separately that it was the correct piece of music. But those of us that issue licenses to a studio, we're warranting and representing that we are the authorized, authentic place that could issue this license to that studio. And when you have a retitle, well, you're not the authorized place. You don't have the original copyright. You've created a derivative essentially, with a different title. And, the other company that has it under a different title, Disney feared that they could go after them and sue them. And they're not even the exclusive rights owner. The exclusive was the original artist, who still holds on to that song, even though they allowed other companies to retitle it. So in my experience, Disney was the first one to start to send an edict out to their supervisors to say, please don't do business anymore with any companies that retitle, because we feel it's a liability. We only want to deal with and issue licenses, accept licenses from authorized copyright holders to protect ourselves. So, it'll be interesting as studios, to my knowledge, haven't come up with a position on AI and what they're going to license and not license. It's starting to be talked about in the community, but I think what I would encourage all the studios to do, and starting in 2026 and beyond, is start to publicly come out with their position on AI, of what are they going to allow for their productions, what they're not going to allow. Like, I think it's going to take some of these studios to take a position and draw a line in the sand to say, we won't go over this line. And I just hope it happens. I just don't know who's going to be the first one to do it.
We do the road rally at the Westin LAX every year. They've got a new general manager who grew up like 9 miles away in a cornfield from the same cornfield I'm from, and we've really hit it off, and I feel like I've made a new friend. And he said, look, we've got a room. They've got a 200-seat theater that's kind of like a Hollywood screening room in the hotel. And he said, if you ever need to do a special event, and you want the room for a night, it's on me. I have been a little desirous of getting you and some other smart people and leading a roundtable with 200 people from all aspects of the industry in a room to talk about this stuff, because nobody is really leading the charge. Everybody seems to be either scared to death or trying to be making a deal with the majors, whatever. I think that the people who are on the ground, boots on the ground, dealing with this stuff daily, we need to start formulating. I don't as Taxi, but I'm still involved, obviously, tangentially.
Right.
I think
that's an awesome.
Yeah, we
think
should.
It's all about, everyone has to communicate about this, and then ultimately, I think everyone talking about it will result in guidelines that feel good to everybody, and then that needs to be promoted and encouraged, that everyone involved in the buying process accepts those guidelines. I mean, I think that's what recently came out with X number of very well-known creative people who are starting to issue things to say, hey guys, we need to come up with guidelines about how we're going to responsibly use AI. And especially in the production world, production has been, I don't want to say decimated at this point, but
you could say decimated.
Really, has really impacted production, especially here in Los Angeles. And AI has an even more existential threat of just completely a whole subculture and economy in LA that has been based on all these various levels of production could entirely be put out of business, by AI, if the studios embrace it. That's where I think the buyers need to come up with, and now we're all talking about Netflix buying Warner Brothers Discovery. There's arguments for and against, and it's a polarizing issue because it was Netflix. So, I think just discourse is good. Communication is good. And everyone needs to start to think about this stuff, because if you want to do music, you got to be involved in the conversation, or you're going to be left out or left behind, or that you may not end up having a career that you can get into, or it'll be a far more limited and narrowed entryway that makes it harder to get into. And the people that are already there are going to protect their space, and they're going to try to prevent others from coming in. There could be a bunch of negative dynamics depending on the direction that it goes. So I think it's incumbent upon everybody to communicate about what they feel as a community is the best way to go.
Well, I propose that in the second quarter of 2026, you and I join hands on this to take the lead because I can get the room. Maybe we can get AIMP or some of the other organizations to kick in, $500 a piece to sponsor, and we do like free beer and wine and appetizers so we know people will actually show up. And it's industry only, only industry people for the time being got to be invited to this thing. But let's get this conversation going because we're all talking about it in cubicles in different office buildings. We're not having this.
Right.
This conversation's amazing. I'd love to have this conversation with 200 people from 6 different aspects of the industry. And here's why. There's a music supervisor that you and I would both say we are good friends with. Somebody we could call on a Sunday night at 10 o'clock at home. He and I had a lunch a couple weeks before the road rally. And I asked him, I said, so how's AI affecting you? Are you guys having to listen for, like AI vocals and stuff? He goes, no, we're not doing anything. And I'm like, what? He goes, no. I said, the networks aren't crawling up your, whatever to make you be super careful that no AI is sneaking its way into your hands and onto their productions. He goes, no. He said, as a matter of fact, this music supervisor also has a small catalog, makes music, gets it licensed in other people's TV shows and stuff. He said, I use AI every day. It's freaking amazing. I'm using it in all the music I produce. And I'm like, dude, you're kidding me. Nobody is even bringing this up to you. Like, are you being careful that we're not putting AI generated music on our air? And he said, not a peep. That to me was absolutely shocking. The other day I was having another conversation with some industry people, and they said that, a friend of mine was at an industry party, I think last Saturday night, with really heavyweight people. I'm not talking about like, editor's assistants. I'm talking about like head of production at a network, VP of publishing at a major publisher, people of that level. And he said AI was all everybody talked about. And some of the people that he talked to said, yeah, we got a couple kids with a laptop making music in our conference room for their shows, which are airing. And I went, no way. First of all, those kids probably don't even know who Benny Goodman is, so that's a limiting factor right there. If they need to give a prompt, it's like, who's your reference for the prompt? There's that issue, but I'm going to leave that out of the discussion for now. But he said that the general tone of the room was everybody's like, yeah, AI is awesome, and everybody's turning a blind eye, and it's getting used every day, everywhere. Not just AI music, mind you, for, obviously all musicians watching this, but for every aspect of what is being made, that AI is just everywhere. Hey, you can't deny great tool, but wow, with all the legal and moral, ethical ramifications and considerations you and I are talking about here, it was astonishing to me that many people are like turning a blind eye.
I agree. And I think it's a great idea. Let's get everybody together. There's Songwriters of North America, which is a great advocacy organization on the songwriter front. They would certainly join in. Society of Composers and Lyricists too could be an interesting, partner into all of this. So, yes, I endorse it. I think it's a great idea.
But we should also get, I've got a friend who is like head of music legal for, I think Warner Brothers, CNN, whatever. I know he's in Atlanta. I had him on the panel, Is AI Going to Kill Your Job, for the 2024 Road Rally. He's a really good guy, really smart guy, is a musician himself. So we need some corporate people. We need a network person. We need somebody from Paramount Pictures there. Let's get one of everybody and do this. Wow, man. We're accomplishing so much here. Did you ever see the animated movie that was out probably 10 years ago called Wall-E, WALL-E, We're there. My
Yeah.
wife walked out of that movie and she said, "That just scared the living shit out of me." And I said, "Why, honey? I thought it was a very cute movie." And she said, "Because that's where we're going to be in 20 years." Well, she was wrong. We're almost there in 10 years. And where
Yeah.
people just
I
ride
totally
around
agree.
400-pound people that you don't even walk anymore. But yet,
Well, hey, and not to pile on the Elon thing, but now the Waymo cars that we're all seeing drive around LA and other cities, that they're no drivers.
yeah,
Like we're totally there.
yeah. God. Um, Man, I love talking to you. I really do. It's almost like I don't even care if this is being taped, but I'm glad other people will get to benefit by your wisdom and perspective. Um, let's see. I'm going to double check. I literally didn't use my notes. I spent like 2 hours creating notes for this, um, and then ran it through AI to clean up make them more,
Yeah.
make them better. I
Right.
hit everything on here without looking at it, so that's good. Um, okay, you know what? Let's talk about the MLC, the Music Licensing Collective. So, for those of you who didn't watch the show that I did a couple of weeks ago, what?
I'm
I
gonna
mean, not
interrupt you
music,
though.
Mechanical Licensing Collective. Sorry.
There you go. That's why. Yeah, I was like, I want to make sure we brand the name correctly. So
Yeah,
yes,
I talk about music licensing so much it just rolls off the tongue. But
I
yes,
know.
Mechanical Licensing Collective. So I had Dave Brogan on 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I got to tell you, that guy, so smart.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, just
completely agree.
he should be a
He's a good
guy
dude.
that we have as part of that discussion when we do it. Um, a lot of people, myself included, 3 years ago didn't even know what the Mechanical Licensing MLC was, what it did, or that it existed. And I believe I'd heard of it, but I didn't really understand what it was. And you mentioned it in one of our previous Taxi TVs. And afterwards, I started really researching it. They became, thanks to you, they became a sponsor of the Road Rally. They come out and do, I think, 2 presentations. They are pounding pavement to get people to understand that there's a good chance they could have money sitting in a bank account that they're not collecting because they haven't signed up with the MLC. So, can you do 5 minutes on explaining what the MLC is, why it was needed, and why the people watching this show should go for it?
Fabulous. Whether you remember this or not, this is actually a cause very dear to my heart because one of the committees underneath the MLC board is called the Unclaimed Royalties Oversight Committee, which is UROC for short. I didn't name it. I'm the current chair. So myself and there are 5 publishers and 5 songwriters, and we comprise this committee. And so this is a topic very dear to our hearts. So yeah, So the Mechanical Licensing Collective, just as a quick bit of history, was born out of the Music Modernization Act that was signed into law in 2018 during Trump's first term. Fun fact is that it I think still to this day may have been the only piece of legislation that was passed unanimously by the Senate and the House by Democrats and Republicans and independents alike.
No, they
So
finally got
every
something right.
they did indeed. So the reason why the MLC got created out of what we refer to as the MMA, there's lots of acronyms in the music business, is that prior to the MLC, which started in operations January 1 of 2021, every uh, interactive streaming service. And so we should make, for those that haven't heard the distinction, it's worth pointing out that there's non-interactive streamers, which is mainly SiriusXM and Pandora, where it's a radio-like experience. You don't choose what things you listen to, someone else is programming it. Those streamers and radio don't generate a mechanical royalty. It's a performance royalty, and you get that through your PRO. For interactive streaming companies like the ones we all now are used to, Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, Amazon, where you can create your own playlist, you can listen to things offline, you can interact with it and choose what you want to listen to. Those streaming services, the resulting streams create or generate rather both a mechanical royalty and a performance royalty. Performance royalty still goes through your PRO. The mechanical royalty, first of all, is getting generated because the audio is sitting on a server somewhere and a copy is being made. And the mechanical royalty that we all benefit from in the business get generated when there's a reproduction, when there's a copy. And we talked about all the server farms earlier. Right. There are copies being made on all those server farms, plus on all of our devices. Every time we're streaming something, it's caching on our device and making a copy. So prior to the MLC, each individual interactive streaming service hired their own third-party vendor to help them figure out who they had to pay. So there were lots of vendors, but the three main vendors at the time were the Harry Fox Agency, Music Reports, and a company that at the time was owned by SOCAN called MediaNet, and that doesn't exist anymore. It's been sold. But for those of us as publishers, we had to go to every single vendor and register our catalog with every single vendor, because they had to go through the matching process of taking the data from a streaming service, matching it up to the composition, who are the writers and the publishers of that composition, so that we can figure out who to pay. But you can imagine, for those of us, when we have to send our catalog to multiple vendors, some vendors are going to do better than the other, either in processing our data and putting it into the database and then doing the match between the composition and the recording. So it just was incredibly inefficient. The MMA, by creating the MLC, created a one-stop. The MLC is now become the one-stop database that all services use, so that we as publishers, or any of you independent artists who are out there, you should know, if you don't already, you're a publisher. You wrote it, you created it, therefore you own it until you sign a piece of paper assigning rights elsewhere. So you're the publisher, and you're the one that they're trying to find. If your music got streamed on these services, you need to register and get paid. So the MLC starts January of 2021, and it's a gargantuan job that they've had to do. You guys have talked about it at the Road Rally. Day Bogan, when he was just on your thing, Day has led a bunch of really important, I want to say procedures, but initiatives is the better word, particularly where Day has taken on interacting with all of the independent distributors like DistroKid, TuneCore, CD Baby, all these distributors that independent artists use, and engaging them in the process, because they need to reach all of the independent artists to let them know that money is sitting there. So, it's a staggering amount of money. We're sitting here in December of 2025, and about 2 weeks ago, I think the press release went out that since January 1 of 2021, the MLC has distributed $3.5 billion in mechanical income, and that's basically been in almost 5 years. So just under 5 years, 3.5 billion. But the crazy thing is that that's just in the U.S. That's not anywhere in the rest of the world. The
right.
MLC
and
is
the
US
MLC
only.
is U.S. only, yes. So how's it being done? Is it still being done piecemeal in the rest of the world, or is there going to be cross-pollination like there is with ASCAP and any of the PROs offshore?
That almost would become another conversation we could do an hour on.
Okay, I'll save that one.
Suffice it to say, though, that generally speaking, outside the United States, the collection societies that exist in each country that are analogous to ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC, they also handle mechanicals at those societies. ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC do not handle mechanicals, though CSAC does own the Harry Fox agency, so one could argue that CSAC does handle mechanicals. But the outside the rest of the world, it's handled on a country by country basis for the most part, and it gets very complex. But it's still money that's important because it's sitting there and it's your money. If you're streaming in that country, you deserve to collect that money. So the flash forward, so that I don't take too much time on it, that the MLC's goal has been to let's track down all of the rights holders that deserve to get paid this money, because the law that created the MLC stipulated that after a certain period of time, any money that is unclaimed is going to get distributed out to the public via what they keep calling and referring to as by market share. So nothing has been, no of that unmatched, unclaimed money has been distributed yet. And the MLC is talking internally about when that process is going to take place. I'm pretty confident it won't take place in 2026. But anyone who has had any any music streamed on these interactive streaming services at any point, whether it be pre-2021, so pre-MLC, or since January 2021, I heartily encourage you, please go to the MLC.com. They have a public database that you can search for, and then you can search on lots of different criteria, from song title to writers or a combination of it, search on artists, search on ISRC, find that money, because the stat that I will put out there, which is kind of crazy to me, that and I will qualify that, let's not hold me to this, because I'm pretty sure I might not have the exacts, but you'll get my point, which is there is around like $50 million that is still being held at the MLC that have all of the individual songs that comprise that $50 million have all earned less than $3. So, when you think about that, the long tail is way longer than any of us ever imagined. But it adds up to a lot of money. So I think, we have a recording studio here in LA at Penn Music Group, and anytime any of our artists are using it and collaborating with another independent artist, because I'm the chair of the Unclaimed Royalties Committee, I go in and I introduce myself and welcome them to our studio. And then I ask them, do you have stuff out there on Spotify or elsewhere? Because everyone identifies almost everything as being Spotify. Mm-hmm. And I'd say 8 out of 10 still, when I talk to them, have released music and have never heard of the MLC. Right. So I encourage them, you got to go there. You got to sign up, because if you don't sign up, your money's going to disappear at some point. And it's your money.
It's free, and they don't take a percentage of what they collect for you, which I was unaware of until I spoke. A year ago, I had Serona Elton, who happens to be in the music department, very high up in the music department at my alma mater, University of Miami, and she's brilliant. And I thought, wow, they got lucky to find her. And then I met Jane. What's Jane's last name? Do you know?
I think you're talking about Jane here in
Bushmaker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And she runs their audit program here in LA.
Right. And she's the one that did the presentations at the Road Rally 24 and 25. Again, brilliant. Okay. And then I met Day, and I thought, man, these guys have just like a brain trust of people working on behalf of musicians who are owed money. And they don't take a percentage. It costs nothing to sign up. And yet most people don't know. So I hope they keep coming back to the Road Rally. I hope I can keep doing taxi TVs with them, because I feel that I have an obligation to help independent musicians put money in their pocket. That's the raison d'etre of taxis. So I love the work they're doing, and thank you. I will be eternally grateful on behalf of everybody I spread the word to, that you made me aware of the work that they do. Man, that hour and a half
it's important. It even frankly is a great segue out of AI, right? Because this is all about how everyone can make a living in music. And if you're leaving money on the table at the MLC, which is US only, that means you're leaving money on the table everywhere else in the world. Learn how it works. Take care of your own business, because ultimately, if you're not going to earn or collect the money that you're due, you're going to have to go do something else. So, like, why leave money on the table when it's your money?
I go back to creative people don't always have an equally balanced business mind, and they tend to be very creative and think, I wish I had a manager, is what we've all heard for a very long time. I wish there were an organization or a service that you did pay for that took care of neighboring rights, the MLC, all these other things that people just, they would rather sit down and make music than fill out a bunch of forms and get frustrated. And I understand that. But money is money, and it's money for making music.
And it's turned out to be a staggering amount of money that's sitting out there unclaimed. It's really worth making the effort. And frankly, if you're going to get into the music business, the business is in the title for a reason. It's
Yep.
your duty to yourself and others to learn how it works. And even if you don't end up doing the work yourself and you get someone else to do it for you, you should at least know what's involved so that you can make sure and police the people who are supposed to be doing it for you to make sure they do it right.
Absolutely. Well, I've got to say, it was worth the wait. It's been a while since we've spoken, really long time, actually. And I hate to sound all mushy, but I adore you. I feel enlightened every time I speak with you. And not only do our personalities mesh, but our thirst to solve every problem in the music industry is a common thread between us.
Well, we'll take our Two Michael talk show on the road. The two
There
Michaels.
you go. At least to the 200-seat private theater at the Westin LAX in Q2 of 2026. Well, thank you, Michael. I hope to see you in the flesh sooner than later. And just thanks for making the time to do this as always. And with that, here comes a little music. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Michael Eames.
Love that theme song.
Keith LeBrant, he's the best.